Hello out there, you wonderful people. This is Andre, the Game Idea Guy. Thank you once again for lending me your time and your ear listening into another Gamer's Thoughts discussion. And so I kind of have a minor bone to pick with SNK and Capcom because it comes down to re-releases of their older material. Now, SNK did do something that was very similar to what Capcom does now with their compilations, and that is release only the arcade versions of them together as a set. They did it with Art of Fighting, they did it with Samurai Showdown, they did it with the King of Fighters at one point, and a few other games where they only released the arcade equivalents. And I think they even did it with the Metal Slug. Yeah, the Metal Slug, when they were doing the anthologies. Now, for some games, releasing only the arcade version of the game is perfectly fine because there's not much that changes from the arcade version to the home. But in some cases, it's actually losing stuff. Like, for instance, when they did the... and even now, with SNK, they did... only the when they did theirs, they were only doing the arcade versions of it, but like you were missing out on a lot of the settings, a lot of options and things that came from the home console counterparts to those arcade games. Like, for instance, the King of Fighters Orochi Saga. Was it the Orochi Saga that they called it? I know I have it. I just haven't looked at it in a while. But the Orochi Saga was literally just all the arcade versions of the games, which was fine if you just wanted to know, like, play the games and get to, like, the story beats for a lot of it. But then you missed, like, legitimately, like, settings and options to change things around for those particular games. And oftentimes, the home console versions of their games, or the ports that were not only on Neo Geo and in the arcade, which is essentially the exact same thing, barring some minor differences, you lose out on the alternative or arranged soundtracks for those games. And to me personally, I enjoy a lot of the arranged versions of songs because I'm going to be honest, the sound chip in the Neo Geo just does not do it for me for a majority of them. So when they had arranged versions of different music, I would always like to hear that one. And sometimes that option was in their games to have the arcade version of that soundtrack as well as the arranged or newer version. And SNK is still guilty of it even now. If it's an older game that was released in the arcade, they do not at all give you the option to change the soundtrack in the game. And I'm just like, why y'all gotta do me like this? And it's not a major issue. It's just a minor annoyance. As for somebody who really enjoys playing a lot of their games, especially their fighting games, it is definitely a minor annoyance. Now, on the Capcom side of things, well, they tend to only really ever release the arcade versions of their games again. Now, if they do a specific game, they'll sometimes do other different stuff with it, like they did with Ultra Street Fighter 2. But for the most part, it's just, okay, here's the arcade version of the game, we're going to throw it in there. Play that. It's not taking into account that sometimes their home console versions had extra features. Like and again, this also applies to the anthologies that SNK had released before, but their more recent re-releases of games have in the added features that were missing from those anthologies. Wanted to make sure I covered that point. But like, take for example, Street Fighter, when they did the 25th anniversary collection. Was it 25th or 20th? Now I'm confused. With the recent anniversary collection release, the only versions of those games are the arcade versions, and they're specifically from your region. That's also a problem. They are specifically from your region that they're there. So it's like, because that was a pain in the butt playing through Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo, which no matter what is maxed out at the highest difficulty setting, where the computer will cheese the hell out of you through a bunch of different crap, and it's stuff that you would not be able to do as a player. That makes it frustrating. But that aside, they've had releases of these games that were better, that had more stuff to them. Like Street Fighter Alpha 2 and Alpha 3 have multiple versions. The best version of Street Fighter Alpha 2 is Street Fighter Alpha 2 Gold, because you get the addition of Cammy as a playable character in Versus mode. You get the Akuma mode. I don't think that's in the original Alpha 2. I think that was in Gold. You get the different soundtrack variants, the remix and the original. And the remix and original thing also applies to the first Street Fighter Alpha. You get the original soundtrack, which was in the arcade, and then the remix, which was the arranged version of the songs for home console. But you also get the survival mode and stuff in there that you don't have in the arcade release of that game. And the same thing, again, applies to Street Fighter Alpha 3. This compilation has just the arcade game. It doesn't have any version of the World Tour mode from the Japanese Sega Saturn Street Fighter 03 or the PlayStation or the Dreamcast version of it or the PSP version of it. It has none of those. And it doesn't have the additional game modes like the dramatic battle and stuff like that, and it's lacking the ability to play as certain characters that were added in at a later date. So there's a lot that's just missing from that. And that also applies to Street Fighter 3. All of the games from Street Fighter 3 are missing additional play features that were in the home console ports of those games that are not in the arcade version. And I'm not saying that makes the games bad, but it's like you didn't take the best versions of these games and put them forward. You just took, okay, we're just going to slap all the arcade versions in. And even if you don't have access to the source code, I know you have access to those games. There's no way around that. You do have access to those games. So why not, put in a little bit extra effort and get those versions of the games into your collections? And I think the more recent release that SNK had for their arcade games, they had both the arcade version of the game and the home version of the game, both on that compilation. So you could play the arcade version and then go ahead and play the home console versions of them and get comparisons. And this is something Konami has actually been very good with their collections. Like with the Castlevania collection and the Contra collections, you have almost all of the different variants of the games available. The only thing from the Contra collection that I know is missing is one of the NES games that was not released as an arcade version of the game or released on any other platform. And it was like, wow, y'all missed that one game, and this would have been a perfect collection for Contra. But they have done a good job with it, putting in the original arcade version and then giving you the NES or the Super Nintendo or the Genesis version of those games. And it just kind of sucks. Like, you look at it, it's like, why couldn't we have both variants? Why couldn't we have, like, the original arcade variant and then the best variant of that game released? Why are we limited to just the one? And I would say it's probably just, hey, we just wanted to do this quickly, get it out there. We didn't want to have to reconfigure all these files. And I can understand that because that can be annoying. But the higher quality product makes your customers happy and makes them come back more repeatedly. So it's just like, I look at that, I'm like, while I do like the collection, and I don't want anybody to take it as me slighting Capcom because I dislike these particular collections, but if you are going to give me a collection, why not give me the best version of all the stuff that you have available? I mean, y'all attempted it with, at least with the Devil May Cry collection. Like, y'all gave everybody the special edition of Devil May Cry 3, if I remember correctly. That's the one that's on there. Now, if I'm wrong, I'm wrong. But it's just like, this doesn't have to be this way. It could be, well, we're going to do we're going to redo the Street Fighter collection. We're going to give everybody Street Fighter Alpha, the home console port. Hopefully based more on the Sega Saturn version of the game, because it ran better. Actually, all of them, as far as the Sega Saturn was concerned, for Street Fighter Alpha ran way better than the PlayStation. Actually, that applies to every Street Fighter that's on both of them. They ran so much better on the Saturn than they did on the PlayStation. And I know because I've played all of them. But still, it would be nice to get the fuller experience from the games rather than a partial. And I know that this is all nitpicky. And this is just basically things that I prefer. But I could see that this would be better for the people that are spending their money on the products to be able to play them. It would just be better in the long run. And you'd have far less people complaining about different things that happen with these games. Like my issue with, again, Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo for the arcade version. And I do need to do a playthrough of that for the Sega Saturn to show the difference. Because, like, yeah, I may be rusty at Street Fighter 2. I'm not that rusty. like, if you look at that video and see how poorly I did, like, it's not because of how rusty I am. Like, it's because higher levels in Street Fighter 2, it's known to literally cheat. And there are videos that document it, which is the screwed up part. But yeah, I don't want to drag this conversation on too much more than I have. But I think that fixing a couple minor issues that some of these games have when they re-release them, and like, and yes, SNK is guilty of it because you won't give me the daggone dual soundtracks, and then some of the games that they have done or have had Code Mystics re-release don't allow you to change configurations, button configurations, and how they have it set does not work for everybody's play style or controller setup. So, again, these are things that could be fixed. Hell, they can fix some of it right now because it's just games sitting without updates. But that's it. I don't want to carry on. I already said that. So if you guys have any opinions, please let me know. Otherwise, thank you guys very much for listening in. Keep your eyes and ears out for more stuff from me. And until the next time, enjoy your games. Peace out, everybody.